The arrow is back. There, now you can see it. The arrow is back. I used this in the Robin Hood video. I used this, I think, in maybe 1 or 2 other videos. Now I'm going to use it in the Brave video because obviously arrows are very important in Brave. Put that over here. There we go. Close enough. I have a couple of stuffed bears because I don't actually have any like stuffed black bears. Yeah, because bears are very important in this movie as well. And I did want to bring up a book that I have. It's not a Disney book. It's not from Disney. It's just called Brave Margaret. And this is just one of the various books that I've gotten from my, library does book sales and stuff like that, where they get rid of books that they can't use anymore. That not enough people are checking out and everything. I've got quite a few books from that. This one was actually, the copyright on this one is actually in 1999. So this book actually came out a long time before Brave did. And it's probably, because it's based off of an Irish tale, so it's probably based off of something similar that Brave may have been based off of, or some influence. That's also, she's got a horse, she's got a sword, she's got red hair, all that fun stuff that is very similar to Brave, but I don't think she's a princess in this. I don't believe that the girl is a princess in this, but I just wanted to show this because it's a nice book and I liked it. Okay, so yeah, Brave. Yeah, this is going to be coming out probably around my mom's birthday. So, and this is also, this is one of the Pixar movies, kind of like, Turning Red is very much a, mother-daughter movie. Brave's also very much a mother-daughter movie, much more of a, that type of a relationship in the movie that's very much on display as part of the center focus of the movie. And, what can I say? I never tried to turn my mother into a bear. I can at least, qualify that. I never did that. I've got back here, I've got my Merida shirt, and then I've got my Merida Finding the TARDIS shirt. And you could not tell me that Merida would not immediately jump inside of the TARDIS, because it's like, what is this thing? And take her, the doctor would happily take her somewhere. He very happily would probably take Merida somewhere. Then again, she could probably just like strong arm her way into doing it. There's a couple of other adorable fanfic, or not fan fictions, fan art that people have made that's like her and Matt Smith's doctor, and I'm like, yeah, no, I can agree with that. The movie itself, of course, Brave came out in 2012. It takes place in about 10th century Scotland, and it centers, of course, around Princess Merida, who is the eldest child of King Fergus and Queen Eleanor of Clan Dunbroch, or the Scottish Kingdom of Dunbroch. And the movie starts on Merida's 6th birthday with, her and her mother just playing and having fun and everything out, like they're like at like a little mini like campsite, not too far from their castle. And, Merida's father gives her a bow for her birthday. And she, we see her just being like this little tiny girl with with the bow that's like probably a little too big for her, but it's for her to grow into, just, firing at that and everything. And, we see the dynamic that she already has. She very much loves her mother, but she also very much like wants this bow and everything, and is very interested in that. And her mother doesn't necessarily think that it's the best idea for her to have a bow, that, a lady should not have weapons and everything, is kind of the way that her mother tends to work. Like, her mother very much has like, this is what a lady should have, and this is what, what I want my daughter to do and everything. And this is, kind of not that territory that I want her to be in. Because of course, part of this movie is, and part of, also, hearkening back to, I guess, kind of hearkening forward to, with Turning Red, it is this whole thing of like the mother imposing their kind of their will or their ideals upon the daughter. And, so we see that, and we see, Merida ends up coming across these will-o'-the-wisps, that of course, in, Scottish legends and stuff are just supposed to, you can, follow them and they'll lead you to your fate. If they like you, they'll lead you somewhere good. If they don't like you, they'll lead you somewhere bad. It's just kind of how that goes into play. And what ends up happening is, of course, Merida and her parents are attacked by this giant ancient black bear that is called Mor'du, which literally, I believe Mor'du just literally translates to black bear, if what I remember correctly. And, they're attacked by it, and, we see her and her mother fleeing, and her father stands and fights the bear. And during the battle, her father lost one of his legs, but now he kind of has like a peg leg, stump leg type thing that he uses. But he's still very much the king of this land and still very much respected by his people and has taken on the moniker of the Bear King. So they've got, bears are part of their crests and symbols. Bears are, there's like a couple of like stuffed bears in their, within their castle and everything. And, we cut forward about 10 years. Into the future when Merida's about 16 years old, we find out that over this course of time, she's had 3 brothers. I think it's Hubert, Haddish, and Hamish, I think are all the brothers, are her 3 brothers, and they're just little mischief makers, always trying to get sweets and terrorizing the heck out of their maid / probably nanny called Maudie, and I feel so sorry for her. I feel so sorry for this maid throughout the whole movie. Because she just gets the the S end of the stick with everything that happens with the boys. But of course, we see Merida has grown very much into, she's got the fiery red hair and everything, and it just goes everywhere. And she's like defiant, she's trying to figure out where she fits in the world, but she doesn't like the fact that so much of her her world has these rules and regulations. That she doesn't want to follow. She has to do all of this, feminine, girly stuff that she doesn't really care for. Like, she does sewing. She has to, I'm sure she doesn't mind, like, learning how to read and write and everything like that. I'm sure that's something she very much enjoys. But, because at that time it was considered very much a, very high status thing to be able to read and write and, do math and different things like that. Like, those types of things, those educational things were considered very, high up in society for people to be able to have. And one of the things that Eleanor says at some point in the movie is, I do what I need to do to be able to give you what we did not have, what your father and I did not have. I think it's not stated in the movie, but I think it's stated somewhere else that, like, Eleanor at the very least came from, like, royal blood to a degree. We don't know exactly. We don't know exactly, how Eleanor and, Fergus met. But I will admit they are I do very much like them as a Pixar couple, and when I do the Pixar couples next February, they'll definitely be on the list for the human couples, because they are very much, even so many years later, once they've been married for at least 16 years, if probably not longer than that, they're still very much in love, and we see that throughout the movie. But Eleanor has been teaching Merida how to do, speak publicly and clearly and politely, and, how to, she's supposed to probably know how to dance, and she's supposed to know how to sew and how to, play music and everything like that. And this is not stuff that Merida cares that much for. She would much more, be much happier, doing sword fighting with her father and practicing her archery and riding her horse. And, we see her like training with a falcon with her father at one point, and that seems to be much more something that she would like. And her mother, of course, does the whole thing. A princess should not have weapons. A lady should not have weapons. Princesses do not chortle. Princesses are, all these rules and regulations and everything that that Merida has to follow, and she's just not very good at it. She just doesn't like doing it. And, we cut to, it's supposed to be like a day where she has to be, where she kind of just to have like a day to herself. And she goes out and she gets to ride through the forest and have fun and, practice her archery and everything like that. She has her horse, Angus, that she takes care of herself. We see her being the one like mucking out the stall with the horse and everything, and being the one that probably takes the most amount of care with him, as long as she, as much as she can, because he is her horse. And, we see her out and she's, training with her bow, and we see her, like, she climbs these, like, this, like, waterfall cliff type thing and everything to get to the top. And, I just love the scenery in this movie as well. Just like, I love the characters in this movie, but I also just love the scenery that they came up with this movie, because it's like, supposedly part of our descent, on my mother's side, we're supposedly partially Scottish somewhere in our line. I'm pretty sure I'm a majority of German, because that's like both my parents' last names are German, and I'm pretty sure German is the majority of my blood, but we think there's like, Scotch, Irish, Dutch, German, Yugoslavian, and like Prussian and everything, like that type of stuff, like just like all shoved together in there. So we think that that's what it is, but we think there's probably some, Scottish in there as well, because my grandfather on my mom's side did have red hair. So, I know red hair is not exclusive to Scotland, but that's kind of the more famous place that it's from. And, we see Merida just, enjoying herself with this. And we, see her get back to the castle, and we see her being around her mother and her brothers and her father and everything. And, her brothers don't actually ever like speak during the movie. They're silent, but they're very mischievous and everything. They're very much a presence in the movie. And it is revealed that there's actually going to be these 3 lords bringing their sons to Castle Dunbroch. Lords of the 3 clans, Lord Macintosh, Lord Mcguffin, and Lord Dingwall are supposed to be bringing their sons along with like their clans for this big, celebration, the betrothal of the princess and everything. And Merida just is very against this whole thing. She does not like this idea of like, it's like, it's one thing for me to want to be queen, because by technicality, as the daughter of the king, she is the one that would become queen, is kind of where that's headed. As the firstborn. And she does not like this concept of like, her mother seems to be trying to force her into this role that she does not want in regards to marrying someone that she does not love, and not even giving her a choice in the matter, and everything. And Merida just is very much against this. And we see like the 2 different sides of this argument when Eleanor is talking with Fergus after Merida's like, stormed off or whatever. I keep wanting to say Mirabelle, but I'm just like, no, this is Merida from Brave, not Mirabelle from Encanto. Different characters. Although they both have like curly hair. And I was going to say big families, but kind of big families. And what ends up happening is, of course, we see this moment where it's like Eleanor is like having this conversation with Fergus. I love Fergus because at one point he is just literally like, okay, well, just, pretend I'm Merida and say what you want to say to me. And then he just goes like, I'm Merida, I just want to be free and have my hair in the wind and have my bow. Just like, oh, God. And it's just funny. And like we have Eleanor like doing like her half of the conversation of trying to explain to Merida about, as royalty, we have our, our duty to our people and to the other clans. And there's, these traditions that we have to hold up and everything. And, this whole thing, that she's showing about, you have to do this, and, you have to show the, uphold tradition and everything, and that, the tradition is very important, and all of this is kind of where they're headed with that. And then Merida is just like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be forced to marry someone that I don't want to marry when I'm not even ready to get married. And throughout the course of the movie, we of course hear this tale of, these four brothers that, there had once been an ancient kingdom ruled by a wise king, and he had 4 sons. And, when he died, it was supposed to be that the kingdom would be like either equally divided among his sons or equally ruled by his sons, with them all working together. And one son, probably the oldest, I think it's stated, does not like this idea, and he goes and he ends up causing, the kingdom to crumble because he just wanted the power for himself. And, that kingdom, got destroyed and faded away. And I do kind of find it interesting, it's like within, there's the 4 princes, and then like within, within the realms of, Merida's kingdom, Merida's kingdom, there's, her clan, the Dunbrochs, and there's also the, the Macintoshes and the Mcguffins and the Dingwalls, that there's these 4 tribes, 4 clans that, work together. They're all ruled by the king, by her father. And what ends up happening is, of course, we're introduced to the lords. We have Lord Macintosh, who is very much kind of like, looks more like the Braveheart kind of version of, like the Scotsman with, they all have like kilts and like stuff like that, or similar to kilts all over the place for what they're wearing for most of the men. But like he's got like the blue paint and everything, and like he's got his son with him. And then we have Lord Mcguffin, who is much more, has like the greens and everything, and much more burly and everything. And he's got his son, young Mcguffin is what he's called, and this young Macintosh and everything. And then there's Lord Dingwall. I would say he lost in the name category, which is the point, part of the joke. And he is, of course, much shorter, much more, wilder, spiky white hair and everything. He has his son. And what ends up happening is, of course, they all get to the castle and they all are, presenting their sons, to Merida, to, King Fergus and Queen Eleanor and everything. And Merida has been like put into this, this dress that is not comfortable for her at all. It restricts her movement. It's much more tight and confining, and she's got like a corset on, so it's much more confining than she's used to. And she does not like that. Her hair is like all covered up and everything, so it's not even on display with how bright and fiery her hair is. And she is, she does not like this whole thing. And, as she's like, everything's being presented to her and everything, we see Mcguffin and we see Macintosh, and then when we get to young Dingwall, it's just funny because, or wee Dingwall as he's called, because it's like as Lord Dingwall is talking, we see this very big, burly, like battle scar ridden man standing next to him, and like Merida is just like, but like Merida and like her parents are just like looking at this guy, thinking that this is of course they think that this is like Dingwall's son, and they're just like, okay, where did those genetics come from? And I'm thinking, I'm in like that tiny little moment when Merida is like looking at this guy, she's probably thinking, okay, maybe that wouldn't be so bad. He's much more intimidating than the other two young lords. And then of course, Dingwall pulls out his actual son, and he's like this scrawny little thing and everything. And, that whole moment. And during this whole introduction is like all, the three lords start fighting, and all of their clans start attacking each other and everything, because it's like someone insulted someone or whatever. And, they're all fighting and everything, and like Fergus gets involved and everything. And then there's this moment where Eleanor just like sighs to herself, stands up from her throne, and then just calmly walks through this brawling hall of like all these men just like brawling and throwing their weapons and everything, and like hitting and punching each other and everything. And she just like calmly walks through, and as she just walks through, it kind of like the parting of the Red Sea, like all of them are just like stopping in their tracks and like stopping and like dropping their weapons and like calming down and everything. And we see like the three lords and King Fergus are just like all arguing and like grappling with each other, and she makes her way over, and then she like grabs them by the ears and like drags them back to the front. I love that moment, because it's just like, yes. Yeah, that's just funny. And, she does that moment, and then, it's, revealed that, Merida gets to pick the task that the boys have to compete in, and she chooses archery because, archery is, of course, her main thing, but her mother also states, the firstborn of each clan is to be a part of this, and, typically that's translated as, the firstborn son. But Merida, of course, is like, okay, I can make this work for myself. And, we have the moment where, Macintosh and Mcguffin both try, and, Mcguffin barely hits the target. Macintosh does hit the target, but it's not dead center. And then Dingwall ends up, hitting the target bullseye, but it's, kind of an accident. And Merida then, stands up and like pulls back her hood, and she's got her bow and arrow, and she's like, I am Merida, firstborn of Clan Dumbrock, and I'll be shooting for my own hand and everything. That moment, I love that moment anyway. And it's, her mother is just instantly furious with her and trying to get her to stop. And Merida is like, walking down the, where the row is set up for all the different targets, and she's, shooting bullseyes again and again and again, and then shooting right through the arrow that Dingwall shot, proving that she can hit the bullseye dead on and like hit the arrow and everything, showing her skill with a bow and arrow and everything. And, splitting it and, splitting Dingwall's arrow in two. And what, of course, ends up happening is, all the lords are just very angry about this. And her mother is, of course, extremely angry about this, drags her into the castle. And they just have this huge, argument between the two of them. And what ends up happening is Eleanor actually grabs Merida's bow and throws it into the fireplace. And this makes Merida just get, so angry, and she just like runs out of the castle, and she gets on her horse and she's like riding away into the forest on Angus, just like not going anywhere in particular, but just riding away on Angus. And, Eleanor, pulls the bow out of the fireplace, and she's like, oh God, what have I done? And, what ends up happening is, Merida ends up finding her way to this like just giant circle of stones. Closest I can equate this to in anything I've been to is, I don't know, there's nothing like this in Nebraska that I'm aware of. We have Stonehenge. No, excuse me. We have Carhenge out in Alliance, Nebraska, but that's different. It's made of cars, not rocks, and it was man-made, and we know how long it's been there. And, Merida just ends up in this, like, these ring of stones, and then she ends up seeing the Will-o'-the-Wisps, and they, like, lead her into the forest, and they lead her and Angus into the forest, and, like, the horse is just like, no, don't do that. Like, the horse, it's like, there's no talking animals, well, there's a talking crow, but, like, there's no talking, like, regular animals in this. And, like, the horse, like, Angus is just like, no, don't do that. Do not follow the frickin' will-o'-wisps. And, like, she makes her way to this hut, and it's, there's this woman inside, and she's, like, carving wood and everything, all based around bears and everything. And what ends up happening is, of course, Merida figures out that the woman is a witch because she has a broom that's sweeping on its own, and she has a talking crow and everything. And Merida ends up, she, like, uses, like, this necklace that she has to, like, buy all of the wood carvings within the shop, and one spell. And, it's a spell to change her fate, to change her mother. And, the witch makes her the spell, and it turns into this little tiny cake. And, it's like, you get your mother to eat that, and it'll change your mother. And this will change my fate? Yeah, it'll change your fate. I'm like, okay, you got to be much more specific when it comes to asking, a request from a witch. I'm sorry, but it's like, if I've learned anything from Disney movies and Pixar movies, it's like, if I ever meet a witch, however that would happen, I am going to be very, very specific into, okay, this is what I want. I don't want to be turned into a bear. I don't want to be cursed. I don't need to have a weird kiss that's going to break the spell. This is what I want. End of story. I don't want some weird drawback or some weird pushback or anything like that. I don't need a monkey's paw. I don't need anything like that. That would be me if I ever have to deal with a witch. It's like, I want a contract written exactly for what I want to happen. And I'm not paying my freaking soul for the thing or my voice. Whatever, just like whatever whatever that would be. I mean, very specific as to what I want. It's like, I'm getting this in writing, and I want it notarized by a lawyer that I approve of before I have the witch cast any spell. The whole Rumpelstiltskin route from Once Upon a Time. Anyway, we're going to talk about Once Upon a Time in a little bit. But, Merida then, makes her way back to the castle, and she, gives her mother the cake, and, her father has been entertaining the lords for the moment while, they try to find Merida, and while, her and her mother try to figure things out and everything. And what happens is, Merida ends up giving her mother the cake, and she eats it, and she ends up, turning into a bear, because that's what happens in the movie. You give her mother this cake, she turns into a bear. And, Eleanor is, she's still very conscious within her own mind, obviously, but she can't talk anymore. So she, like, growls and grunts and everything like that. And, Eleanor is like, well, just kind of thinking, well, if we just explain things to your father, then we can go and find this witch and everything and get everything reversed. And, like, Merida's like, yeah, no, I don't think showing you to Dad is going to be the best idea. He's the Bear King, and he'll probably try to hurt you, which would be bad. And she has to have her brothers, Harris, Hubert, and Hamish, whatever. The three brothers help her with getting their mother out of the castle and causing, like, this huge distraction, which I love results in, like, all of the lords and, like, their men and Fergus up on the roof because they were, like, chasing the bear through the castle. Again, the maid gets pulled into this, and I feel so sorry for her. And, the all the lords and everything, all the guys end up on top of the castle, on top of one of the towers, and, like, the door is locked behind them. And I love the joke that they have to like tie all of their like robes, kilts, whatever, together to like climb down the side of the building. They're walking back into the castle and they're all like, half naked. Which, I mean, back then wasn't as huge of a thing because as one of the bonus features on this, it's literally showing about dirty, hairy people because like there wasn't a lot of soap back then and, you know, all this other stuff and everything that, you know, it was, you know, being clean was a lot harder to do. And what ends up happening is, of course, Merida and her mother end up going off into the forest, and they end up finding their way to the witches' you know, shop again. And, you know, they go inside, and there's like a cauldron that's like an answering machine that is just so funny. And, you know, the witch explains that, you know, your spell will be permanent by the second sunrise. So if you want to fix it, you have to mend the bonds that have been broken. And, you know, through this whole time, Merida's been like, you know, a witch turned mom into a bear. It wasn't my fault. And like all this other stuff, like blaming the witch and everything. And, you know, that night her and her mother like sleep in the forest and everything. And then, you know, the next morning, you know, credit to Eleanor. She, you know, tries to get things going, but doesn't work because she picks like nightshade berries and there's like really bad water that she got from like somewhere that was like obviously not, you know, running water. And, you know, Merida's like pointing that out to her, and Eleanor is just not having a good time with this. And what ends up happening is Merida goes and she like, you know, she goes fishing and she catches a fish and, you know, cooks it up for her mom and everything. Like, you know, she's like, oh, but you think that it's bad for a lady to have a weapon, even though, you know, she just used the weapon very usefully to, you know, catch them fish. And then, of course, we cut to, you know, Merida, you know, Eleanor kind of, you know, breaking loose a little bit, and she's, you know, catching the fish and having, you know, catching the fish herself in the river and then like having fun with Merida in the water and playing. And then at one point, like Eleanor just kind of, you know, goes off, you know, walks off into the woods, and she kind of goes like actually turns into a bear, like the bear within her like surfaces. And she almost attacks Merida and then, you know, snaps out of it. And then like, you know, they're kind of wandering around because like they end up finding the will-o-wisps again, and they end up following the will-o-wisps to what appears to be this, you know, ancient crumbled castle. And as they're looking around the castle, you know, the witch had explained that there had been someone, you know, years ago that had come and asked for a spell to change their fate, given the strength of 10 men. And, you know, he paid with like a ring that had like these like crossed axes on it as like, you know, the symbol. And like this kingdom has that symbol of the crossed axes. And via their investigation, kind of Merida's investigation of the building, she figures out that, oh, this is the ancient kingdom. There were the 4 princes, and the prince that like destroyed the kingdom became Mor'du, that he got the same curse that Merida had, and he became Mor'du. And, you know, she realizes that, you know, they have to try to fix the bond, mend the bond that's been broken. And, you know, she thinks because earlier in the movie she had like sliced a rip in like this tapestry that her mother had made of, you know, her mother and then, you know, her and her father and her brothers. And, you know, Merida thinks, oh, if we just fix the tapestry, then we should be good. And, you know, what ends up happening is they do end up getting attacked by Mor'du, but they escape. And then, you know, they make their way back to the castle and they sneak inside the castle. And they end up having to have this moment where Merida actually has to act as a distraction in the Great Hall, because like Fergus is on one side and like each of the clans are like on each side of like the Great Hall, like just kind of like, you know, firing arrows at each other and everything. And Merida kind of has to do what her mother did earlier, is just like, you know, she has to be the one to talk. And you know, she walks into the center of the room, and, you know, everybody's just like stopped fighting because like, okay, the princess is here. Let's not fight in front of the princess, or, you know, let's not, you know, hurt the princess type of a thing. And, you know, Eleanor is like sneaking into the room, like moving her way along the wall, pretending to be like a stuffed bear as she's like watching Merida. And Merida is like telling her, you know, father and the brothers, or not the brothers, her father and the lords, you know, I've been talking with the queen, and, you know, we've come to a decision and everything. And she's like, she makes this comment about the fact, you know, she brings up like the four princes, you know, the lost kingdom and everything. And how it's, this like concept of like, legends or stories that have, that ring true, or, stories that have truth in them. And that, that did happen, that kingdom was real. And she brings up these moments in like their own history of, the way that their kingdom had been founded was that Fergus had been the one to rally, the different clans, had been the leader of the Dunbrock clan, and he rallied, the Macintosh and the Mcguffin and the Dingwall clans to his side to fight off, the invaders, in Vikings, or, the Vikings or whatever other invaders there were that were going on at that point in time, in 10th century Scotland, because I don't remember my history correctly for that. But, that he rallied behind them, and that, through his, bravery and courage and everything and leadership on the battlefield, they made him king of, of their kingdom. And, like she points out these different stories, it's like, like looks at one of them, you saved my father's life, and, you rushed to the, this one's aid, and, you're the one that showed up on horseback and, brought the cavalry in and everything, and, was, what resulted in like them being able to win and everything. It was like, you guys made my father king for a reason, because he proved himself to be of kingly qualities and everything. And, like we see that moment, and like we see them kind of like all kind of like, yeah, well, like they're kind of blushing a little bit at times too. And like we see their sons there. And, what ends up happening is Merida is about to do this, where she's about to say, she's about to apologize for like what she did with, with the bow and like with the contest and everything, and like joining in the contest and everything. She's about to apologize for that, and basically probably say, we'll, probably say something along the lines of, and we'll redo the contest, and whichever one is the, probably was about to like say, we'll redo the contest, and whichever one of the Lord's sons is the one that, wins the contest is the one that wins my hand, that type of a thing. And, Merida, looks over at her mother, and her mother is like, gesturing as a bear, going, no, and like she's doing like, she's going through these, like, it's kind of like a very interesting game of charades, because like Merida keeps like looking at her mother, and like no one's looking over at her mother to see what she's looking at. And like Merida and her mother are kind of like communicating in this moment where it's like there's not words, but it's done with actions, where Eleanor kind of is like, showing Merida, and like then Merida is kind of like translating, because like nobody's looking at the bear. You're not going to notice the giant bear in the room. Why wouldn't you notice the giant bear in the room? But whatever. Well, there's one guard that kind of notices, but like he doesn't notice until like the end. But what ends up happening is Eleanor, through Merida, basically is like, how about we break with tradition. We let our children, follow their own hearts, choose their own path, and, let them, find love in their own way, as opposed to trying to force it or something like that. And all three of the young lords are instantly okay with this, because like young Macintosh is like, I think that's a great idea. And Mcguffin, we can't really understand what young Mcguffin is saying, because he's speaking like a very specific type of dialect that is like a much harder to understand dialect, but it's just funny in the movie. And then of course Dingwall is just like, well, I didn't want to marry her anyway, type of thing. Like none of it, and the lords are just like, how about we let them, win her heart before they win her hand, and everything. Like, they're all just happy, and like, this is fine. We'll do that. And everything, it's like they kind of establish their loyalty to each other and everything, and to Fergus and everything. Like Merida kind of proved herself in that moment. And what ends up happening is Merida ends up, like distracting them, like, how about all of you go and get like liquor or wine or whatever out of my dad's cellar and everything, and have fun with that, and and I'll go talk with the queen and everything. Like she heads off, and like all the men leave the room, and like her and her mother like sneak their way up to the queen's room, where she's going to. And apparently Fergus has not returned to his room in like the last 24 hours or whatever, because like when Eleanor had turned into the bear, the room kind of got destroyed and everything. And their process of trying to deal with the fact that my mother got turned into a bear. And what ends up happening is they get into the room, like Merida is trying to get the tapestry down, and like she needs like needle and thread to like fix the tapestry and everything, because it's like the night's wearing on. This is probably middle of the night at this point in time, considering how quickly sunrise is going to come. But what ends up happening is, Fergus ends up, or Helena, or Eleanor, I don't know why I keep saying Helena, I'm sorry, Eleanor ends up kind of going into, going back into her bear mode again, where it's, the bear is taking over and everything. And she ends up, kind of causing problems, and then Fergus shows up and he sees that their room was destroyed, and then he goes and he finds Merida with this bear, and she's like, no, Dad, you can't hurt the bear is Mom. And he's just like, you've been bewitched and everything. And Mom, a witch turned Mom into a bear, tries to explain it. He doesn't listen. He thinks the bear killed his wife. I mean, admittedly, her clothes are all torn to shreds and the room has been destroyed, although how a bear would get into the castle is kind of left up for debate without having help. And what ends up happening is, Eleanor actually ends up, in, a moment of, it's, the bear, but it's also, Eleanor, and, she kind of fights against Fergus, and, she ends up kind of, scratching Merida and kind of attacking Fergus, and then she, runs out. And she's running off into the night and everything with Fergus locking Merida in the room and, giving the key to the maid to Maudie, and I feel sorry for her again. And, him and the rest of the lords and the rest of the men are chasing after the bear, chasing after Eleanor as the bear. And Merida ends up looking, and she sees her 3 brothers come out, and they've all been turned into bears because they all ate part of the cake that turned them into a bear. So they're now bears. And what ends up happening is the 3 little bear cubs are she's looks at Maudie and she's like, you have to get the key, they have to get the key from Maudie, and they're chasing Maudie all over the castle. And while they're doing that, Merida's okay, she gets the tapestry down and she gets the needle and thread, and she's trying to sew the rip in the tapestry and everything. Not very well, but she's trying. And, the brothers show back up and they get her out of the room, and they get on Angus, and she's her brothers are hanging on to the back of the horse, and her and everything. And, and I don't know if she can tell them apart, because I cannot tell the triplets apart, but she probably can because she's their sister, and their parents may be able to tell them apart. And what ends up happening is, Eleanor is being, chased through the woods by her own husband and by the lords and by their men and by their dogs and everything, just chased through the forest and everything. And she ends up in the stone circle again, where, she's kind of backed into the circle and everything. She's trapped, and they end up getting her tied in with ropes and everything. Fergus is about to attack her, and Merida shows up. She's got, the tapestries all sewed back up again, and, she's got her brothers and everything. She shows back up, she shoots the sword out of her father's hands to, stop him from attacking her mother. And what ends up happening is, she gets in front of him, and she's trying to, explain that, this is actually your wife and everything. And what ends up happening is, this is when Mor'du rushes, this is when Mor'du shows up, and, he tries to attack Fergus, and in the process, he almost attacks Merida. And this is it's the mama bear rage mode kicking in for Eleanor, because it's she's the mother that's already going to do whatever she needs to protect her children. Add in the bear instincts on top of that and the strength of a bear. She, the ropes get ripped apart as she's pulling away, and she runs over, and she's the one that's actually doing most of the fighting against Mor'du and everything. And she ends up there's one of the rocks that's cracked along the middle, and she ends up banging him into the rock a bunch of times, into the stone a bunch of times, to get it where it eventually it falls on Mor'du and it crushes him. That's not a fun way to go. But it crushes Mor'du, and we see his spirit come out of his body, and he's set free and everything, and he seems to have this look of gratitude on his face. And he goes off, and he becomes one of the new will-o-wisps, and he goes off. And then it's sunrise is coming, we see it slowly coming over the horizon, coming over the stones. And Merida, grabs the tapestry, and she throws it over, her mother, over the bear. And, she's looking at her mother, and she's looking at, we watch as she's begging for it to work. Why isn't it working? I fixed the tapestry. I mended the bond. And, what ends up happening is, it's just we've all had arguments with our parents on various different issues of things. And what ends up happening is for Merida and Eleanor, it's kind of like, for Merida, it's this moment where it's like everything's come to terms. Because like earlier in the movie, she had like this, a dream where she remembered, when she was scared and her mother was, trying to, keep her calm and everything, like during a thunderstorm and everything. And Merida is just like remembering how much she does love her mother. And it's not like she ever stopped loving her mother. That was never the case. It wasn't she ever stopped loving her mother. It was just that in the context of everything that was going on, her mother never seemed to listen to her. And in this moment, it's Merida, the bear seems to have fully taken over, and Merida ends up, is just kind of like hugging the bear. And it's like this moment where she finally just apologizes for what she did. She's like, I'm sorry. I'm the one that does this. I'm the one that got that spell. I'm the one that asked for, for you to be changed and everything. And, I didn't ask for you to be turned into a bear, but this is what happened, and I'm sorry. And, it's this moment where she is fully just, apologizing for everything that she's done recently in regards to, causing these problems for her mother and everything, and for their kingdom and everything, and just like apologizing and trying to, mend the bond and everything. And she wants her mother back, and she just goes, I just want my mom back. I just, I love you, mommy. I just want you back moment. And, she, everyone around them is just kind of watching this moment. Like Fergus is standing there, and like the three little bears that are her brothers are there, and like he's realized that those are his sons as well. And if the spell's not broken on their mom, then it's not going to be broken on them. And like all the rest of the lords and their men are watching and everything as this is happening. And we just have this close up on Merida, and she's just like crying and crying. And then we see like, the hand come in and like start, hugging her, and it's her mother. And she looks up, and it's her mother has been changed back into a human now. She's been restored to her true self. And Merida's just like, you changed. And, it's Eleanor's just like, we both did, as in we've both changed in regards to, the way that we see the world. And, Eleanor is just so happy, and like the three boys got turned back into their regular selves. And, Fergus is so happy and everything that his wife is back and not a bear anymore. And he's probably very relieved that he didn't actually hurt her. And, he's just like, oh, it's just like, and at one point she's just like, she is naked, but she's got like the tapestry around her. But like, all the Lord, Fergus is just like trying to cover her up in front of the lords. And like, they're just like, oh, like everybody's like turning around. And of course we cut to like, it's a short while later. It's probably not that much later in all honesty, but it's a short while later. And like, they're, sending, they're getting ready to send the, say goodbye to the clans, the boy, the three young lords, young lords are going to have like their chances to try to, win Merida's heart and everything. And what ends up happening is, of course, Merida and her mother have made this new tapestry. The family tapestry is still there, but they've made this new tapestry that is, Merida and the bear representing, that that relationship there, that part of their story. And like previously in the movie, anytime you would see Eleanor in her human form, she would have like her hairs and like these very nice braids and everything, and now they're not in braids, they're just kind of like free flowing a little bit more, to show just she's kind of not like let loose, like she's not like, she's still going to be herself as queen, but she's going to be a bit more open to letting having Merida have a bit more choice in what's going on and everything, and have a bit more, less restricted by her own rules. And, all the lords are saying goodbye and everything. And, Eleanor and Merida are up on top of the hill watching, as, all the ships leave and everything. And, they fix their relationship. And there is an end credit scene where it's basically like, the crow that was the witch's, assistant, and the broom show up to like deliver all of the wood carvings to the castle and everything. And like, they need this delivery note signed, which is just funny. In regards to cast, and I kind of can put this as, well, it's a lot of Scottish people. And it was probably also just like, Disney kind of was like, well, what's one other property right now that has a lot of Scottish actors in it? Harry Potter? Harry Potter. Just find me a bunch of people from Harry Potter and we'll put them in this movie. Because a bunch of this cast is from Harry Potter in some way, shape, or form. Because we have Kelly MacDonald, who voices Princess Merida. And she is, of course, Helena Ravenclaw in Deathly Hallows Part 2. She's the Grey Lady. And that we have Julie Walters is the witch / the woodcarver. And she is, of course, Molly Weasley in Harry Potter. And, in all 8 movies. And, so we have her there. She's also been in, I think some of them have also, been in, other Disney things as well. Particularly, I know that Julie Walters was in Mary Poppins Returns as, one of the household staff in that. And I think she's maybe been in something else for Disney, but I just can't remember what it was. And then, of course, we have Emma Thompson as Queen Eleanor. And, of course, her main Harry Potter role is, of course, Professor Trelawney. She's also, in regards to other Disney things that she's done, she is, of course, also Captain Amelia from Treasure Planet. She is P.L. Travers in the live-action kind of story of how they made Mary Poppins called Saving Mr. Banks. So she's the woman that wrote Mary Poppins, and then Walt Disney is trying to get her to sign over the rights, and she plays P.L. Travers. She is, of course, Mrs. Potts in the live-action version of Beauty and the Beast. And she is, of course, Baroness von Hellman in Cruella, the new Cruella movie that was out on Disney+, which I finally have actually seen. I enjoyed it. It was okay. Not my favorite live-action Disney movie, but it was an interesting way of telling the story. Rest of the cast, we have Billy Connolly as King Fergus. I don't know if he's really been... I know that he's a British comedian and he's been in other stuff, but I haven't seen him in too many other things. We, of course, have Kevin McKidd as Lord Mcguffin and his son. And so he does the talk for Lord Mcguffin, and then he does the much more of a certain dialect talk for young McGuffin. We have Craig Ferguson as Lord Macintosh, and I loved him from the Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson. I loved him. I love him, of course, as Gobber in How to Train Your Dragon, of course. He's also popped up in a couple of other Disney things here and there. Not too many things, but he's been in some of the animated series. And I just like Craig Ferguson for his stand-up and everything. And then we have Robbie Coltrane as Lord Dingwall. And he's, of course, Hagrid from, of course, Harry Potter. And I think he's been in something else for Disney at some point in time. But I love the fact that Robbie Coltrane is known for playing this giant of a person. He's because Hagrid's half giant, and of course in this he's the shortest of the lords, and that's just funny. Not really too much else here. We do have John Ratzenberger as Gordon, who's just he's one of the guards that works in the castle, and it's he's not very recognized for the role because he doesn't do he's doing a Scottish accent in the movie. I did want to bring up the soundtrack for this movie. Some of the Pixar movies don't have a huge amount of a soundtrack, but this one has some good songs in it and everything. We have Touch the Sky, which is performed by Julie Fowlis, and then Into the Open Air, also performed by Julie Fowlis. And then we have Learn Me Right, which is performed by Bertie with Mumford & Sons. So... I do just like the soundtrack for the movie, and the music in the movie, and the score itself outside of the songs is very good as well. Most Pixar movies have pretty dang good, soundtracks in that regard. And then in regards to the miscellaneous bits that we have for Merida, outside of Brave itself. We, of course, she's been in Sophia the First a few different times. I think she's been in 2 different episodes or something like that. She kind of just shows up and helps Sophia, with some, whatever problem she has or whatever. Because Sophia the First has the ability to I guess speak with other Disney princesses or whatever. So, they do that. I don't really know too much about that. I just know that she pops up there occasionally. And of course we have, Ralph Breaks the Internet, which of course, we have, Merida is in that because she's one of the official Disney princesses during the Disney princess thing. And of course I love the line where it's just she says something really big in Scottish, and then Moana and Anna are just looking at Vanellope and just yeah, we can't understand her either. She's from the other studio. And Kelly MacDonald came back to voice Merida in that. And of course she's, in the Oh My Disney area, of course. And, she's got her, her, I think her shirt that she ends up having when they're all in their casual clothes, just says "Mum" on it, and has a bear on it, and she's wearing kind of this the plaid shirt and everything. She of course has her, I think she has her sword and she has her bow and arrow during that time frame as well. And then of course during the climax of the movie, of course, well, first I did want to point out in here they have when Vanellope is like hearing like a bunch of the different girls' stories and everything. Merida does say, and I'm gonna try to say this correctly, and I apologize because I'm probably gonna get it wrong. I apologize. She's like, I gave me mummy a cake. She turned into a big bear. Then my old man tried to do her in. If that isn't a big mess, I don't know what is. I don't know what is. And it's like, she's saying this with like the heavy Scottish accent, which I just find funny. And then later on, she ends up saying, ouch, Leng Meyer Lum Riek and my moose ne'er leave. I don't know, but it's like, I don't know. It just like sums out of something that like literally is approximately for like a New Year's Eve thing. That's basically like, long may your chimney smoke and ye no mouse steal your grain store. Hurry back, young girl. I don't know. It confuses me, but I still like it. And then of course, in the climax of Ralph breaks the internet when Ralph is, after the climax when, Ralph is falling out of the sky and all the princesses work together, Merida uses, her bow and arrow to like, fire off the dresses that are connected to like Rapunzel's hair to like catch him and everything. And, she's one of Vanellope's friends and everything. So we have that. And then we have Once Upon a Time, which I have not gotten to talk about Once Upon a Time for a little while on this. Not in any major aspect. My mom and I are still working our way through Once Upon a Time. We kind of got sidetracked by getting her caught up on some of the Marvel movies and some other stuff. But yeah, we got to finish up Once Upon a Time. But I have watched Merida's section on Once Upon a Time very recently. So Merida shows up in the fifth season of Once Upon a Time, and the actress that they got to play her was perfect. She ends up interacting with Emma, who has now been turned into. Emma is now slowly becoming the Dark One during this moment. So, during that time frame, Emma's like trying to fight against becoming the Dark One. And she ends up meeting Mirabelle, and we kind of finds out that, Mirabelle's like, because Mirabelle was like 16 when everything happened with Brave. This is supposed to be about 10 years after that. So she's, lived a peaceful life in her kingdom and everything. And then what ends up happening is her kingdom was attacked and invaded and everything. And we find out later that it was King Arthur that attacked her. As in King Arthur of the Round Table, that attacked their kingdom. And in the process, her father ended up getting killed. And she now has to either choose one of the lords to be her husband, or they're going to kill her brothers. They captured her brothers, and they're going to kill him if she doesn't show up at a specific time and either, hand over the crown of the kingdom to them or whatever. And during this whole time frame, she ends up meeting Emma and some of the other crew, and then she ends up like kidnapping Belle and trying to get Belle to help her. And then she ends up back, and she ends up saving her brothers because her brothers are like all lined up to be executed. Why they're trying to execute her brothers, I don't know. But she shows up, and she ends up, proving herself. She like fires the bow and like knocks all of her, fires the arrow, like knocks all of the arrows away from her brothers. And, stands up in front of the rest of, the three young lords that are probably, like, taken over of their clans by now. And, we see them all interacting and everything, and she ends up, that they agree to make her queen. And we cut to, several months later and everything, and she's going to be crowned queen. But the witch showed up and says, oh, well, you see, your kingdom actually owes me a debt because your father wanted this helmet, and he, in order to get it, he had to, make some type of a deal with me or whatever. And like in regards to that, if it's like I get the kingdom if the helmet's not returned. And so Merida has to go like on this quest to find the helmet. And like she meets, like she's got like Mulan is actually her friend, because we get like this flashback to like Mulan had like shown up and like had been like hired by her father to like help train Merida how to fight better and everything. And so they become friends. And like we see Ruby there as well at some point, and like she's met Belle and Emma and everything. And so there's like this whole journey that she goes on, and she ends up having to fight against King Arthur and she, along with Lancelot, end up, forming a truce, I guess, and like go off. And what ends up happening is, I don't remember exactly where this happens, but I know that there is like another curse that gets cast, and Merida is caught up in the curse, and she gets taken into, the Storybrooke world, and she has to, she basically has her heart ripped out by Emma, and she is basically used by Emma to train Rumple into trying to make Rumple into a hero, because convoluted reasons. But at one point Merida ends up, is forced by Emma to drink a potion to turn her into a bear to then fight against Rumple, and then she gets turned back. And then once Emma has been freed of being the Dark One and is no longer evil, Merida does end up getting to go home, and she is crowned queen of her kingdom and everything. And she ends up, she's crowned queen. And if I remember correctly, like the end of like her character involves, I know she gets to go back, but one of the things that happens is she ends up finding, she ends up getting her hands on this type of ale that she can use to, like you splash it on someone's grave, then you're able to communicate with them. And after she's like crowned queen, she ends up, because like her memories her memories get messed up and everything with the way that the curse works, and she ends up going to her father's grave. I think it's after she's been crowned queen, and she goes to her father's grave and she like splashes some of the ale on it. I think the ale was like a gift from the witch and everything, and she like splashes some of the the ale on the grave, and her father's ghost appears, and she's able to see him and hug him kind of one more time, like he's it's like, I'm very proud of you and everything, and you're going to be fine, and you're going to be a great queen and everything. And I think that's the last that we see of Merida. Somewhere in that range is when we get the last bits that we get with Merida, where she is sent home and everything. And actually, she does get to meet Robin Hood, which I just find fun, because it's just like Merida and Robin Hood are two of the most famous archers in Disney, in Disney canon, and I just find that fun. So Merida does kind of get like a happy ending in the end. She gets, sent home and everything, and gets to be, queen of her people. Her brothers are okay. She's got her mother there, and she has her support from the Three Lords. And I think Mulan is still around at that point in time too, possibly. I don't remember. There's a bunch of stuff that happens during that time frame, but it's just like, I don't remember if that's still part of that or not. Where that lines up exactly with the timeline. But like, I do like what they did with Merida in Once Upon a Time, and I was glad that they were able to like pull at least something from Pixar into Once Upon a Time, because there's not really a whole lot in Pixar that you can put into Once Upon a Time. You can make references to, Finding Nemo or, the Monsters, Inc., but you can't really like, those don't quite fit into the world that you're trying to build with Once Upon a Time. Brave, you can push into the world and make it fit perfectly fine, because it's already kind of like this fairy tale setup. So, that's what I have for this. Well, it's under an hour video, so that's what I have. I thank you very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and I hope that you have a nice rest of your day. Bye. Some say our destiny is tied to the land, as much a part of us as we are of it. Others say fate is woven together like a cloth, so that one's destiny intertwines with many others. It's the one thing we search for, or fight to change. Some never find it, but there are some who are led.